put them out of business? Walmart. Walmart sells $250 billion worth of stuff during the year. Now, this is the revenues of IBM, Microsoft, Time Warner, and Coca-Cola combined. Walmart has 1.3 million workers, more people in uniform than the U.S. Army. It's the #1 seller of guns, apparel, DVDs, CDs, diamonds. That's just a few categories. It's the #1 energy consumer in the country. It's the #1 real estate developer. And last year, during the fall, it had one day of sales equal to the GDP of 36 countries. Now, why do we need to know about Walmart? I'm here to talk about Target today, right? Why do we need to know about Walmart? Because Walmart is Target's #1 competitor. Now, think about this. Walmart has put everybody else out of business. What would your organization's message look like if your direct competitor was the most aggressive company on the face of the planet? How would your message change? How would you get your message out when your competitor is the 800-pound gorilla of corporate America? I think one of the problems that Kmart had was that it adopted Walmart's message without being Walmart. It didn't have the most hyper-efficient infrastructure and logistics system in the world, and so it couldn't deliver on that message. That message was uniquely Walmart's because Walmart can deliver on it. So how does Target survive and get its message across in this environment? Secret #1, brand identity. Target has carved out a unique niche, and it's an oxymoron. Does anybody remember George Carlin's skit, Jumbo Shrimp? Military intelligence, plastic silverware. Target's is upscale discounter. It's an oxymoron, but that's what Target is about. It's about style, it's about design, it's about whimsy, it's about fun, it's about walking into an environment and feeling great about shopping there. It's Target. Anybody here ever call it Target? Okay. Now I have another prize here. When did the company first hear customers call it Target? Take a guess. Let's see some hands. Come on, be brave. It's 8 in the morning.
1993.
93, okay. 95. 88. 85. 2002. 62. Give this man a book. Excellent. It was 1962. In Roseville, Minnesota, Douglas Dayton told me he heard a customer first call it Target. And the funny thing was, everybody I interviewed thinks that they made this up. Well, I call it Target. Well, guess what? So does everybody else on the planet. And what Douglas Dayton said at the opening of the first Target store is, and I quote, we are offering high-quality goods at low margins because we're cutting expenses. We would much rather do this than trumpet dramatic price cuts on cheap merchandise. So you have to say that Target has been blessed with a very strong corporate heritage. It had that brand identity from day one, and even earlier. George Draper Dayton was the founder of the Dayton's department store in 1902. The department store quickly got a reputation for high-quality goods at low prices. It had a unique customer service policy. It was one of the first stores in the country you could return goods for cash. And it was known for its honest advertising. If you could find a mistake in a Dayton's department store ad, you got $1, which was a lot of money in 1902. And the company stood behind its goods, so it built up this corporate reputation. Now, Douglas Dayton told me in the 1950s, the company's lawyers wanted the company to stop using the word guarantee for legal reasons. But employees figured out a way to get the message out. He told me a story about a customer who's in the gardening department in the downtown store, the flagship store in Minneapolis. And the customer came up to the gardening department manager and said, "Can you guarantee this plant will live?" And he said, "Ma'am, I can't use the word guarantee, but if I've ever seen a plant that has the will to live, this one has it."
Talk about Target's culture and how it contributed to where it is today.
Well, it's so interesting. Target has been blessed with an incredible corporate heritage in that everyone calls Target the upscale discounter, and they think that's a recent development. But it goes back to 1962, actually, to the founding of the company. I interviewed Douglas Dayton, who was the founding president. At the opening of the very first Target, he said, "We will be the upscale discounter because we're cutting our costs, we'll offer quality merchandise, we're not going to offer cheap stuff at deep discounts." So that was their corporate strategy from the very beginning. It's just in the last 10 years they've gotten very good at executing it.
That and we're paying more attention to this slicing and dicing of the categorization that goes on in retail now, where if it's not a department store, it's an off-price retailer or a discounter or an everyday all these things. They were ahead of the curve from that standpoint.
They sure were. It's very interesting, this convergence of retail channels. I moved to the suburbs last year, and just in the last week, I've gotten a flyer from a drugstore, a department store, an office supply store, and a discounter for school supplies. So, where am I going to buy my school supplies for my kids? At a discounter, because it's the cheapest place, and that's what the surveys are showing for back to school. So I think Target, because it has that style edge, in its culture and in its merchandise, is going to benefit from a little bit of the spillover. A parent goes to a store to buy crayons and buy something for themselves.
I can imagine, though, that any retailer fears being considered the hot retailer at the moment. Kohl's was thought of that for a while. Gap, Old Navy.
From hot to cold.
Well, and that's what happens, isn't it? So how does a Target necessarily try and remain ahead of the curve?
Well, I think there's two things that are going on. Target has been incredibly clever about its licensing deals. It's benefiting from the decline of department stores because higher-end product lines are seeing their sales at department stores decline. They know their customers are gravitating to the discount channel. So Target has gone to companies like Calphalon, which does high-end cookware, and said, hey, why don't you do a cheaper line for the mass market in our store? Our stores look nice. Your stuff will look nice in our store. So they do that. The other angle is they're pursuing licensing with people like Isaac Mizrahi and Todd Oldham, very well known on the fashion scene, not necessarily well known in Middle America. Target licensed their products, produces it. People go to Target knowing they'll find style. They don't go to Target for a particular designer the way they'll go to Kmart for Martha Stewart.
And funny as you mentioned, anecdotally, I'm hearing that the Mizrahi and the Oldham lines aren't doing all that well in the early stages here at Target.
That's what I heard actually about Todd Oldham, was it didn't do well that year, but they renewed with him. It was a 1 year and they renewed with him. But it also reflects back to Michael Graves, who was the first licensing deal they did. He's the Princeton architect. He does a lot of sort of fancy housewares at a cheap price. His line didn't do well either when they first started out, but they stuck with him because it differentiated them from Wal-Mart, and I think they're hoping the same will happen with Todd.
But it does point up how retailers like that will hitch their wagon to a specific brand, Kmart and Martha Stewart, or some of the other designers out there, and let their brand carry over to the umbrella brand that they've already put together.
Well, I think Target has been very clever about that. I mean, if you look at their ads, it's Target has Todd Oldham, Target has Michael Graves.
Exactly.
Kmart, it was always Martha Stewart is at Kmart. So they subordinated their own brand to hers. Target is not going to do that, and they've said so publicly. There won't be a mini mall.
You either call that extremely savvy or extremely arrogant, right?
Choose your adjective.
Exactly. But it's worked so far. Laura, good to see you. Good luck with the book. Thanks for joining us. Laura Rowley, the author of the new book on Target, How the World's Hottest Retailer Hit a Bullseye, just in the stores now.